we're talking Afrobeats, and I know this is an exciting conversation for everyone because we've been consuming so much of the genre in the Caribbean. You know, it's dominating. You see it dominating in carnivals in Notting Hill. Last year in Jamaica, carnival was a big thing. So I will start with Nigel first, based on what Fela presented. You know, he talked about the soft power, which interpret as cultural confidence. Talk about the support of radio stations,
media generally,
homegrown talent, the support of the DJs. Based on what he presented, what lessons do you think we could learn from the rise of Afrobeats that we need to apply here to promote our music?
Well, one of the things that I looked at, including the origin story, soca is supposed to be 50 years old, based on Nyla Blackman's grandfather saying that he wrote the first soca song 50 years ago. But the thing is, there are a lot of parallels in terms of the growth of that kind of thing. But what the Nigerian music industry has over generally the Caribbean music industry is that volume. And we all know the music business is a volume business. It's not about good, it's about popular kind of stuff, right? So the way that we have to move forward, I think, is ideally via collaboration. It's been suggested by everybody here, right? Collaborate, right? Whether you do it regionally or certainly across the pond or up and down the Americas as it is. Some of the lessons is what I think I understood there was a kind of connection with the London music scene in terms of black music in London at one point was dominated by Caribbean people, that Windrush generation, but now it's dominated by the African presence, right? So that the diaspora, certainly in London, has an important role in terms of promoting movie stars, music, and that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking that is possibly where the growth of our music is going to have to happen. We have to have a stronger connection with our diaspora. We have a lot in North America, but there's a fair amount in Europe, in England, I should say. And how they work together as a body is what's going to make this thing work. And I think Shane had mentioned the notion of a collective speaking with a collective voice. Something that really and truly it's not our greatest gift, certainly in the Caribbean and certainly not in Trinidad, in terms of having these collectives that make sense. Or work, I should say, let me take that back, that work. And that, I think, is a thing that we have to do. And I think one other thing that has to happen is there was certainly a role for media, because they had ultimately they ended up on Billboard magazine. I remember seeing one of those issues. But there's always been a media presence to report on that growth. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily have that in a full way. Laura Dowrich, the #1 entertainment journalist in Trinidad and Tobago, and I keep saying this over and over again, is one person, right? We need to have media. We had media houses that remove their whole features department, right? So I think those are the things that we have. We have work to do, ultimately. Who's going to do it? Possibly we have to do it. Possibly my friend here, who's the chairman of MusicTT, can advise the policy makers how to make it work. But I think we don't have the volume, so we have to work in collectives, we have to work collaboratively, and we have to utilize media in a big way to help us get the message across. It's working. There's some, what they call Trinidad music, Trinidad and Zest. They're dominating in terms of numbers on YouTube, dominating. And they're also yearly, so they don't just peak at carnival time. But there are very few of them, and we just don't have those numbers. How that generates, for us in Trinidad, how that generates recognition that, okay, there's something to work there. Maybe. I met Ira Star in St. Lucia for St. Lucia Jazz, and one of them said they wanted to work at Prince Wani. She and CK. And they said, oh, we want to work at Prince Wani. Nobody wanted to work as soca artists. So there's a space there to do collaboration, but as I said, there's also a space there for more work to be done.
Yeah, I mean, let me just touch on that a couple of things quickly. Yeah, for a while, the UK was dominated by Caribbean music, and don't forget, the UK was predominantly with Windrush, Caribbean.
It's Caribbean.
Was very, very important to what was happening. And then the 90s with dancehall. And I've said this before, the unfortunate thing was the lyrics of, with dancehall, it was easy to be shut down and suppressed. But what London has done, the UK music scene, they have their own voice with grime and drill. And they've kind of continued and they've worked at it, they've pushed, Femi, who's here, a lot of his films, is based on the UK music scene. not Afrobeats, but grime, and at that level, the Americans are now suddenly excited about grime, excited about drill. I think sometimes when that happens, we lose sight of the journey and the path that we were on. And then suddenly, oh my God, the US is interested. Oh my God, Drake wants to do a drill song. Artists kind of get confused and they're waiting for Drake to hit them up in their DMs. I think you're right, media plays a massive part. If you look at, if you tap into what Nigerian media did, the radio stations just kept on playing, and then at one point they were like, why do we keep playing hip hop? There's barely a Nigerian station that leads with foreign music now.
Is that a policy, or is that just
internally? The NBC has a 60% local policy.
Our government said no to policy quotas.
And just quickly, they've even extended that to television.
Our government
and advertising.
They insisted they wouldn't do it.
You can't. Foreign adverts shot on foreign ground with foreigners cannot be played in Nigeria, but they are working around it because it's too restrictive. Because a lot of the foreign brands you shoot ads in South Africa and use, and that has an adverse effect sometimes because you can't have a blanket policy like that. You have to have a middle ground. Collaboration is extreme. You're right. We've sat here, we've said it. Now, my task to the artists out there is it's not going to be us sitting here. It's got to come from the artists. This collaboration that we keep talking about. It's not the policymakers. We've always worked outside government. We never, government initiatives. They're just there to create an environment for you to be able to function in. They're not there to handhold you or to give you tons of money to make things happen. So, to the artists out there, you have to, you really have to challenge yourselves. And I know Nigeria has numbers. There's almost 200 million people, of which 60 million are, young people under the age of 21, I believe, or 25. So the numbers are there, I think, for the Caribbean. That collaboration is across the Caribbean countries, but also between the Caribbean countries and our continent. I think that's important. And then the Caribbean diaspora, I think they have a part to play. In the same way now, I always say I'm Nigerian first, African second, everything else, after that. You just have to wear even though people see, I had an experience at the airport that I'm not going to talk about here, but it's because I carry a green passport, but I refuse to carry any other passport. Do you know what I mean? I will moan and complain. I'll complain, why are they treating me this way? I know why. Do you know what I mean? I know the things we do, some people, but we are all so proud to be green, white, green. Someone looked at my sneakers today and said, is it because you're Nigerian? Not really, but I could turn around and say, it is. Do you know what I mean? I'm saying your identity is very key. And growing up in London, we grew up on Caribbean music. My dad lived in London in the 60s. He grew up on, Caribbean music, reggae, soca. I woke up every Sunday to Bob Marley playing and stuff like that. So I think we've just got to get back to that. I think the young artists now have got to get back to being proud of where they come from.
And I want to play on that with question to John, because we've seen, for instance, in Tobago, there was a festival last year called Tomac, and they brought Burna Boy. They were the first to bring Burna Boy to the country. Mm-hmm. And the reason was that they wanted to educate Tobagonians about their history and their close ties to Nigeria, right, and use the music as a way to educate people about their identity. So, John, do you see that opening, that pathway, as one way to get our music out there, especially on the continent, which has the numbers, which could help us?
Yeah, I mean, I have some serious opinions, even, and some of my brothers' opinions. When I came, I sat there and I spoke to the brother there and I said, I don't know, you just have a face that looks like a producer. And he said, yeah, I'm a producer. And I said, well, what are you doing with Afrobeats? Are you been influenced? And he said, yeah, we're using it and so on. That for me kind of had me thinking a bit. But when you look at what he's saying and also the literature that all of us have been exposed to, the fact that collaboration has become big, you've had Wizkid with Beyonce, Brown Skin Girl, you've had the same thing with Davido, right? The collaboration seemed to be saying something. We just saw a picture of Burna Boy with two Trinidad, yes. And I mean, what it's saying is that clearly there's something in this music that we need to explore. But I have a different kind of feeling about the same way how Fela, and going way back, how they started this thing about using African instruments and fusing with other stuff, right? And then finally creating something that now we are all benefiting from. I just feel that what we need to do, because in Trinidad, what I notice is that Trinidad and Tobago, we are really good at following. We follow like that, all right? When Rada came with, but as soon as that came in 1986, everybody, soca just became that. You know, everybody started with that beat. And if you go through all the things, we keep changing. We throw away the brass, I feel that we need to use this opportunity, not only just to do the collaborations, that would certainly give us a little window, but I think we also have to start looking at how we can take what is TNT and starting to also punch in and start to create something that might become, very, very important in 30 years. That becomes a real kind of fusion, even with what's existing now. But that's just me.
No, but I agree, and the producers have to, there's something that's innate TNT. I'm not from here, so I can't tell you what it is, but I know it's out there. It's in the music. It's in soca. I don't think the answer is, when we say collaboration, everyone immediately may think, oh, we got to, and I probably said it myself, put a TT artist with a Nigerian artist. No, I think collaboration is more in terms of creating a pathway. So a pathway where original TT music can be exported outside TT and enjoyed the same way Afrobeats is enjoyed. But I think also we have to be extremely careful, especially for young talent, to not limit them to other music. I spoke to a beautiful artist today. She's from here, but she loves R&B. That's her thing. So I think we have to be careful. We can harp on and say, you got to go back to the roots and do TT music. I think it's really about, you got to be TT at heart and then do music. You got to be Nigerian at heart and then do music. Do you know what I mean? Whatever comes out in that process, it's really what we're selling. We're selling our culture. But that doesn't mean you can only do, to get back to where dancehall was in the 90s, we have to now suddenly try and make soca or, convince Marshall that, so I think, bringing Burna and seeing all these guys here, I think that's great. What we would love to see is the other way as well, and find a way to do that. I think that's part of our 5-year roadmap, to be able to say, you know what, we can do a festival in the Caribbean that's infused predominantly with Afrobeats, but then we can do a festival back home in Nigeria that's predominantly soca and Caribbean. If you look at the South Africans, my Afrobeat champions almost took over Amapiano, which is a South African sound. Nigerian artists, Wizkid, they released what they called Afropiano. And the South Africans refused. They just held on to Amapiano. You know what I mean? Because that's their sound. That comes from their history. So I think there's room, there's opportunities, right, for everybody. And I think, like you said, you know, Fela and Tony Allen, they created a sound. That's tough to do, but I think that's where we need. I think young artists need to get back to the way Fela and those guys work, which is to create from scratch and do something interesting.
I think it's so important to emphasize that cultural confidence. We have people in Trinidad and the Caribbean who sing all sorts of genres of music. And there was a time I remember in the hip hop community, people didn't feel comfortable rapping in their Trini accent. Everybody did it in an American accent. And then, you know, shout out men like Matix and like, you know, that and Brave Boy, people started embracing the Trini accent.
Yeah.
And I think that's something similar that happened from what you presented in Nigeria when Nigeria
Hip-hop.
started to embrace who they were.
Yeah.
That they became successful.
Yeah, it's key. It's like in sports, you know, I played cricket at county level in the UK, and Brian Lara was a superstar to me. I never thought of him anything other than he was from Trinidad. He played for the West Indies, but I always said, you know, to me in my head, he was from Trinidad. You know, and from there I have to visit Trinidad. This is my favorite cricket player.
You and a billion Indians think the same way.
Right, yeah. You know, and just like and even Dwight York, you know, in football and how those guys represented, I think on the music side, we have to kind of go back to that.
If you don't mind me stepping in, what you just suggested is the idea that there has to be a presence out there. So in England, as we said, it's kind of dominated by the African and
At the moment.
British-born, but African parents, whatever it is, right? There's some Caribbean-born, I understand Caribbeans may have been critical to the creation of grime. Certainly it's a new wave of jazz music that is basically dominated by children of Caribbean people and things, right? But having that presence and actually owning a heritage and saying, well, okay, my dad's from Trinidad, I'm born in England, but I'm Trinidadian. Those kind of steps go a long way. The idea of a diaspora, the idea that Trinidad is now a diaspora is something that is a very radical thought, but it's probably one of the things that's going to help us put a footprint any and everywhere. And once you just get a toe in the door, those are the things that are going to help. It's much easier to deal with somebody in LA than to jump in a plane to fly to Trinidad and hope that they will answer the phone.
No, you're right. I mean, there's the...
But I also think that globalization has kind of made the world kind of flat, you know, and because of that, it isn't hard to to talk to each other now. And I mean, we've seen what TikTok and the media streams and everything has done. But I have a question, if I could be mischievous. So I was at a conference in the States where a guy was doing a research on music, RPM, in terms of the speed of music. And he made a point where they did a whole research on several genres, and they came up with the beat of 119, which was supposed to be what you would say people feel comfortable moving and dancing and relating to it, right? So that was his research. I'm just saying, don't take me here. So after doing it, that was his average, which he came to. I know that part of the problem, when I used to travel for tourism, when we go to places like Germany, Denmark, the soca was just too fast, and people complain, all right, in the carnival spaces that we have people performing. Do you feel that is a valid thing for us to look at in context of what we do as our soca?
Not at all.
Not at all.
I think, it's a dangerous ground to start. The research sounds great, but I think it's a dangerous ground to start saying now soca has to conform to a certain research-based element or data or...
I said I was being mischievous.
Right, no, I know. The countries you mentioned, so let's take Jamaica very quickly. Reggae is huge in in Europe. Sweden, the Germans love reggae. Netherlands. Norway, Denmark, all those countries, there's huge reggae festivals. So I think, those are the kind of examples we can tap into, is how did that happen? There was a time soca was huge outside Trinidad because of the carnival in the UK and carnivals around the world. I personally, and this is my personal opinion, I think this is just Afrobeats time.
Yeah.
I think suddenly there were many years, where it wasn't cool to be Nigerian. It wasn't cool to flash the green passport. And now suddenly it is. And yeah, that's thanks to our music. So I just believe that it's a timing thing and it will come full circle. And I think, interestingly, and I think, if I had a one-on-one with Buju Banton, he will admit that when he came out of prison, when he went into prison, how big he was at the time he went into prison. And then he came out of prison and there was a big 6 months, and then suddenly no one really cares. That's soul destroying for an artist.
Yeah.
He was the biggest dancehall artist when he went into prison. Spent 10 years. In that 10 years, no one cares. The music had moved on. Your counterparts had destroyed what you had built. But then on the flip side, reggae continues to live on. But reggae is an anomaly because of Bob Marley, I guess, in that sense. So we have to be very careful to latch onto those things. There's this idea, people continue to pay homage to Fela Kuti and what he created. But I personally met Tony Allen before he passed, and he said it wasn't actually the two of them. It was J.K. as a guy. If you read the book, J.K. was the creator of Afrobeats. And the three of them used to be friends. Fela's early band half of his band ended up in France. They live in France today. And that's why most of his music licensing is held for some bizarre reason. So I think, I'll go back to say, I think collaboration is important, but what's more important is locally, artists must continue to create, continue to challenge themselves, and look for opportunities to tap into this current Afrobeat movement, but do not lose your soul and your culture just because this is the big thing going on right now. AI is going to make a massive difference to what's happening in music. And I think it will come full circle. And Marshall is still probably the biggest talent that we know, but Olatunji is out there doing the same. Kes is still doing it. Remember when Kevin Little was big, he had a massive hit.
One song.
One hit, but he still lives on it.
One song.
It's still the biggest song now.
He still lives on it. So
Song still popping.
Still the biggest song.
And I listened to the still pan today, and I'm like, that is a sound that could, through film, through games, there's a way to get TNT music back out there through certain platforms and certain channels, and that's why we're here. That's why we're at RVRB, and we're looking for ways to do that, for sure.
Well, Fela, thank you so much for sharing again your knowledge with us and enlightening us about the history and the evolution of Afrobeats. And I hope it provides some sort of inspiration for the artists here and those watching online in the evolution of their own music and their careers. And we definitely look forward to the work that you're going to be doing here, and hopefully we can do that festival you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
You have two promoters here.
Yeah, we should.
I'm just glad to be sat with two OGs here. And
OG boy, I reach.
they've got.
Well, we have come to the end of this panel, so I want to thank our panelists again for giving us a little enlightening discussion.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.